Welcome back to the Power and Lifting Podcast. I'm your host, Solana Lewis, and today, me and my co-host, Kristen Dunsmore, dive into what we wish we knew as beginner powerlifters. I think this is a perfect topic to start 2024 out with, just some basic tips and ideas that we have about how to be more successful faster when it comes to your powerlifting career early on. Whether you've never competed before or you've done like maybe one meet, but you're still pretty new to it, I think this episode would really help you out. And also we reflect on what we did as beginner powerlifters and what we specifically are like, probably could have done better if I had done this. So fun episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys are avid listeners of the Power and Lifting Podcast, please do leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating. If you're on Spotify, you can leave us a rating. We really appreciate it. You can also support the podcast with the link in the show notes. And let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. All right, y'all. I'm here with my official co-host, Kristen Dunsmore. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
It's 2024. Like,
when did that happen? It was January 2023 last week. It feels like.
I know, and like so much has happened in the year. Like, if you really look at powerlifting, I feel like this was the most drama this past year.
Yeah, I feel like that's every year, but it seemed there was always something to talk about on a weekly basis. Something was always going on.
Yes, that's what I'll say. I mean, obviously, like when the split actually happened in 22?
2021.
22. Okay, 2021. That was obviously.
It was basically last month.
I feel. I'm like, wait, how long has it been? What's going on? I'm still confused. Like,
last month in 2021.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, yo, like I started powerlifting at 19. I'm about to turn 28. So what year is that?
Baby.
9 years ago?
Yeah.
2024 now. Is that 2016? I can't count. 16.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, 2016. I've been powerlifting since
2016.
So it's just weird that it's 2024.
Wow. So actually, I started competing in 2014. So, and my first official powerlifting meet was end of January 2014. So I will be officially have on and off competing for the past 10 years.
Like,
wow.
Crazy.
Just to age myself.
But hey, it's what makes you a veteran in the sport. That's why you're so
I was 24 when I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so weird to me I was a teenager technically. Like I was, but it's like I was almost 20. But
yeah, it's just, and again, these past 10 years, it's been a lifetime. If you know, I mean, a lot has happened since then, but it also feels like yesterday.
I know.
So weird. So weird.
It's one of those New Year's reflection moments where you're like, oh God, like yay, but like obviously you have two options, right? You can die or keep living, but you look back like I'm old.
I feel like COVID aged me by 5 years, just in that 1 year time span. It was like normal, and then anything after that, it just like I don't know what's happened since then.
I feel like because COVID was like the blip of life, everything is now, was it pre or post COVID? Like
exactly.
That's how you define time zone, like time stamps, I guess, in life.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Solana, so what are we speaking about this week?
What we wish we knew as beginner powerlifters.
So what would I tell 2014 Kristen Dunsmore? Or what would you tell 2016 Solana Lewis, aka Solana Lifts?
Yeah, Solana Lifts. We were just talking about this before we turned the mics on, y'all. Like, no one ever says Solana Lewis. Like, and no one knows my last name. It's just Solana Lifts.
Yeah, and so when we speak about other people, I'm like, wait, who is that? Because I only know everyone by their Instagram handle. And so when people talk to me, they're like, hey, Chris. And I'm like, and I've gotten used to it at this point, but Chris only became my name once I moved to California and once I started lifting. I never had that nickname before. And I think it's just because my Instagram handle is Christy. And I've had that since I think I started Instagram, and I actually tried to change my name at one point, my handle, and then I just looked too weird. I didn't like it, so I had to change it back.
You're lucky no one stole it in that like time that you changed it.
Actually, so someone does have my handle, my name. So I had to put a period or something in between. And I've been trying to get that taken care of since then because it's obviously a fake troll account because it's my image and my photos. Uh,
Oh,
and I've tried to report it for, I mean, it's been there for like 3 years and nothing's, yeah, still
nothing
there.
has changed. Wait,
And
lastly, okay.
I'm pretty sure my mom follows that page too. And I'm like, Mom, what are you doing?
You know, she shouldn't know what the hell she's doing.
I know, I gotta love her.
One last thing before we start. Okay, you're talking about knowing handles. So one time I did a whole episode. I think it was on my own podcast with someone. We were doing a previous show before I was with Two White Lights. And do you know? Well, you might not. K Swole. That's her Instagram handle.
Yes.
Okay. So
Sam Calhoun's lifter.
yes. Well, she was. They're good friends, and people think that she's her
Okay.
lifter. So you're talking about the right person, but she had a different coach. But she's from
And
Virginia.
and I don't know her name. I know Kay Swole.
Okay, so yes, so her name is Kania, right? And I
Okay.
had never heard her name. So we did a whole previous show. Girl, I'm talking about this Kania person as a girl who I've never met and just impressed by her numbers, not connecting it. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, why isn't Kate competing?
Yeah.
I did a whole episode and someone reached out to me like, actually, you talked a lot about Kania and how impressed you were with like her numbers and stuff, but it's K Swole. Like that's who it is. Like you saying you
Yeah.
never met her, but like you've met her, done a podcast with her, we've seen pictures of you together. I was like, yo, I didn't know her name at all. Like Kania and Kay, nope. So that was my worst moment where I was like, yo, that was embarrassing. Forget it.
I mean, listen, I've been there. I'm pretty sure everyone has at this point, so I wouldn't feel too bad about it.
But okay, let's actually start. So, what we wish we knew as beginner powerlifters. So, I want to start with the topic of coaching. So,
Mhm.
I'm gonna let you go first on this one. Like, do you believe you should get a coach when you're just starting? And I want to kind of frame it too. Like, this is someone who never competed like really early on, but like they at least understand that they enjoy squat, bench, and deadlift and have been doing it for at least 6 months consistently. So they know they enjoy it and they want to start to train for a
Yeah.
competition.
So I'm gonna go based off of my own experience because that kind of sounds like myself when I first started is I got into powerlifting training or at least squatting and benching and deadlifting before I ever did a meet. And I didn't have a coach. And had I talked, if I could go back and tell myself, one of the things that I probably would have done is gotten a coach. And the reason that I say that is because at the time, and there still is, there's a lot of free programs and there's a lot more options now, and there's a lot of better options now. The ones when I started was like Shiko and Smolov and West Side.
I know
And
all
if you're not,
these. And
so if
was
you're
it
not,
531? 531.
I think 531, but that wasn't one that was really on my radar. So the two
Okay.
main ones was really Shiko and Smolov. And Smolov it's an insane amount of volume. I believe even their beginner version is 4 days a week of squatting. And it's like a 5x7, 6x5. Day two is like I don't know. I remember the last day was like a 10x3. And I think I made it 2 weeks before I was like, this is just insane. I quit.
I want to kill myself.
I knew enough that I wasn't trying to die, but I didn't know better, and I also didn't have the best form, especially looking back at my videos now. So I was doing this high volume, high frequency training with subpar technique. And I wish that I had a coach to cue me and little things, right? I mean, like I've squatted, like I said, it was fine. It was too depth, it was too standard for powerlifting, but the quality of the technique was It could have been better, right? So I would say that if your goal is to compete in powerlifting and you want to do well, I always recommend a coach, whether you're a new lifter or even an elite lifter. Even the best lifters in the world have a coach. So if you want to go anywhere with powerlifting, I would 100% recommend having coaching.
I like that. I I mostly err on the side of yes to getting a coach early. My own experience was, I mean, I got a coach right away. Basically, I've been lifting for a year, like not powerlifting, but just like got in the gym for the first time in my life for a year. I've been an athlete my
Same.
whole life, but I never lifted, or like I'm talking like couldn't do a push up. Like no one told me what a lunge was. I just was running all the time and doing volleyball. Which,
Yeah.
really thinking about it, I should have done the weight room for a track. Would have helped me a lot. But anywho, so I did like random bodybuilding.com. That was my jam. I would Google workouts and just do it. And I would also follow Sarah Bomer, who is, I don't know if you know what that is, but she makes Bomer Nutrition. So she's like really big with like making supplements and stuff. And she was just a
Okay.
woman who looked fit. I had never seen a woman with muscle who wasn't either. I just pictured like bulky woman or scrawny woman. And she was just beautiful in between. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
um,
Yes. Do you know Jamie Eason?
I don't.
So she was big back in back in my day. Uh, so my source of nutrition and training was bodybuilding.com. And there was this woman, her name is Jamie Eason, and she was kind of what you just described. Is she wasn't skinny, and she wasn't the traditional bodybuilding physique that I think a lot of women might misinterpret as, well, if I lift weights, this is what I'm gonna look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that was honestly my viewpoint too, was
Of
this,
course.
if I lift, I'm gonna look like this
Blow up.
bodybuilder that, yeah,
Because it's so easy to gain muscle. Yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years. I wish I had more. But
yeah, yeah. Now that you've been training, you're like, oh, I couldn't even look like that if I
I
tried.
tried. Like, I would need some extra help that's not legal
Yeah.
incarceration. Anywho, my point is, after that year of just lifting, I was introduced to what powerlifting was, and I immediately got a coach. I was like, I want to compete in it, and that was just first thing across my mind. And I won't
Mhm.
pretend like this was like the best coach ever, but for someone who didn't know anything, he did get me through my first meet, and it went really well. And I came into it knowing, understanding like the meat, like understanding the squat to death, bench press. My lips were hideous. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Like, technique help is a major reason to start out with coaching, and I needed a lot of work with my technique after I left as coach. But it doesn't change the fact that he gave me a program, and I had someone there to push me and help me and like at least guide me to get into like my first meet. And I got to the meet, and like it went great, and I wasn't confused and like, oh, huh, squat, where do I go? Like, like the first meet, like I go to first meets all the time as a referee, and I see people just looking like lost puppies. I'm like, I can't save you, I'm refereeing, but my God, you're about to bomb out, because I said you have to unrack the bar before I give you the squat command. You staring at me for 45 seconds, I'm not going to say anything to you. Like, you have to unlock the bar. I can't just start teaching you what to do here. So, you know what I mean? Just basic stuff
Oh,
like that, too. Like, truly, just get a coach early. I'm really big on that. My
yeah,
only other thing is like, I don't disagree with like, hey, there are free programs ran by coaches who are really intelligent coaches. I'm not against you getting a free program to get you through your first meet, in the context of, like, I have friends who have done this. You're at a powerlifting gym with people who know what they're doing, and like you kind of have like that community that's like kind of teaching you along the way. And so you, like,
yeah.
and you have a friend like, I'll get you to your first meet, like I'll literally handle you, and I've done 7 meets before. So like you kind of have an environment where it's like, hey, I want to see if I like this. I'm following a program. My friends are telling me what depth is. My friends are helping me out. You might still need a lot of technique help. So eventually I'll always say get a coach. But for the first meet, if you have that beautiful, perfect environment and friends, to get to your first meet, that's not the worst thing ever. And that will help you discover if competing is fun for you. So there's kind of a give and take here, where I'm not completely anti not having a coach. But if you just in a Planet Fitness trying to figure it out with Google, my God, you're gonna have a rough
Yeah.
time, and you might just hate the sport because you just are going about it the longest, slowest way possible.
Yeah. And I really like the fact that you brought up the kind of gym, because I do like that you said that, as being in a powerlifting specific gym where you are surrounded by lifters who probably have more experience and can at least give you, maybe if their expertise is not coaching, they still understand the sport, they understand technique. And yeah, in that case, maybe you can have a program and then working alongside friends and fellow lifters on the nuance and the technical aspect. So I really like that. And so I think that leads you to your next question, is what kind of gym, and do you need to lift in a powerlifting gym if you want to
Mm-hmm.
compete in powerlifting? What do you think?
So I say, especially again, we're talking about new people. If you have the opportunity, which you probably do, because 2024, y'all, and now I can throw a quarter and hit 5 powerlifting gyms. If that opportunity is there, make the investment. I'm sure that gym is more expensive than Crunch, but it's worth it because number one, you get to experience like the actual bars with the sharper knurling, the kilo plates, which I don't care what anyone says. If you have the option to lift a kilo plates, do it. Oh, I always say that. I don't care. People are like, oh, you can train at any gym. Like, yes, you can for powerlifting. You can. If you don't have the option to use kilos, then yeah, don't. I wouldn't say then don't compete ever. Just sit at home. But like,
Yeah.
kilos feel so different. Using a competition rack is so different. Like, if you can train with that, it's 10 times better. And then you get the environment. And as a woman, to be around other female powerlifters, that's huge. Because I didn't have that for my first 3 years. 2016, there was like 8 powerlifting gyms near me now that I can drive within 45 minutes. There was zero. I was at
Really?
24-hour fitness. Yes. Men and
Wow.
women stared at me like I
Okay.
was crazy because I had 225 on the bar for deadlift. Like people walking up to me like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like it was, I'm happy I had an in-person coach because I would have been so uncomfortable. I wouldn't have made it, I think. Like I hated being stared at. No one was near me. All the women were at the five
Yeah.
pound dumbbell section or on the treadmill. All of them.
Yep.
All of them. So, like I say, do it. The environment is worth it. The extra money is worth it. The gym costs $100. Look at your budget, y'all. Are you at Chipotle every week? Are you at Starbucks every week? Like really? Like I hate. Sorry, it's like a pet peeve sometimes when someone says they can't afford like a powerlifting gym, but like I know that person goes out to eat every other day with their powerlifting friends. I'm like, really?
Mhm.
So yes,
Yeah.
100%. If you can do it, hands down.
Yeah. So I will counter that with, yes, I do think that if you have an opportunity to compete in a gym, by all means, that doesn't mean that you have to. When I first started, I didn't train at a powerlifting gym, but it was a strength gym, at least had deadlift platforms. You were allowed to use chalk. It had racks. I think it actually did have uh, actually I lied. So that was the second gym. The gym that I went to beforehand, it was called Aspen, and it's similar to like an LA Fitness. And I was training out of that for a long time. And that was where I did my first meet. But once I switched over to a strength training gym, it was like night and day. So I would say that, do you need a powerlifting gym? The answer is no. But if you really want to take it seriously and become bougie, whenever I go to a commercial gym, I'm like, oh, I have to squat on the commercial bench. Oh my God.
That is so
Oh, this
me.
bar is so horrible. It's so soft. I can't deadlift in this because there's no. And
Yep.
so I become that bougie person who's like, oh, these weights have these 45-pound plates have these little like the rubber holes in them, and oh my God. Um, and then I sit there and I'm like, Kristen, seriously, like, come on, you're fine. You're on vacation, you can train a day in a commercial gym. So you can make it work. And I'm pretty sure that oh gosh, now I'm gonna draw a blank. Chandler Babb
Okay.
for
Oh
a long
yeah, that's
time,
a good
where
example.
She was, I mean, she's not competing at the moment, but when she was competing, she was training in a she was so the
Some
rack
regular
that she was
gym, like
squatting in, the rack height, because it wasn't adjustable. So she would squat on, what do they call, like, those step
like the plyo steps.
thing? Yeah,
Yeah,
and then so she would be squatting on these plastic steps, and then she was going to compete in Sheffield. So you can definitely make it work, but yeah, it's going to be less than ideal. But people have competed in subpar gyms and they've done extremely well. So that's
100%.
my
I mean,
take on it.
I always say to you, like, my first 3 years was 24-hour fitness, like with the plates that
Yeah.
they didn't even have round plates, y'all. You know how it's like to deadlift with the stupid little
Oh, the
octagonal
hex
plates that
plates.
like whatever X plates, and you freaking every rep the ball rolls.
And then you'd
So
have
like,
all these bruises on your shins because you
yup.
dropped the bar and then yeah,
Hit you. And like
then there.
doing that, I mean, my first meet was RPS, but doing that, I won my first meet at RPS and like broke their records. And then
Hmm.
I used that gym to do my first USAPL meet, which got me into nationals. And I used that same gym to do my first nationals, and I got second. But because the first place junior aged out, I got to go to Worlds, and I did all of that at a commercial gym. And then training
Hmm.
for Worlds, I was back and forth between a powerlifting gym that had no kilos, but still was like better bars and the environment was cool, that chalk and stuff. I was between that and Equinox. And we
Hmm.
know Equinox is not, well, actually, they're all
Oof.
different, but Equinox is like the one I was, that was very much regular gym. And like I won Worlds. Like I train
Yes.
mostly there. So like it's 100% doable. I'm definitely bougie AF now. It's truly so bougie. Like I went to Crunch Gym this week to do accessories only because New Year's Day my gym was closed, and I was annoyed. And I was like, my attitude is so sad. Like this is so annoying. Like I was annoying myself by being annoyed because I was like, it wasn't even the people. I'm really chill about people. I was like, yo, this equipment, ew. Like I was so mean. Like,
I know. And then because everyone's squatting facing the mirror. And then I
oh
always, whenever I
yes.
go and I face in the other direction and people are looking at me like I'm an alien, and it's like, what are you doing? You're facing the wrong way. And I'm like, I know, but I'm doing it on purpose.
It's really, yo, it's hard. I have a hard time squatting in front of a mirror, and I had to do that last month because my powerlifting gym had the powerlifting section, and that section was closed off for a day. So I went to like and
Yeah.
even our quote unquote regular section is very nice, but like it's just in front of mirrors. And I was like, okay, we're gonna do it. Y'all, like, tell me how
Mm,
everything moves slower because I'm like trying to figure out where to look. And it was messing me up. I'm like, I am
yeah.
pathetic. I am actually pathetic. Like
And I always watch myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh, my knee looks off. Oh, my hip. And I'm like trying to fix it. Like,
mid rep,
oh, my
pushing your knee
face.
out.
Like, look at that squat face. Oh.
The worst. Oh my god. Okay, so my overall consensus was if you have access to the gym, go to the powerlifting gym. You're saying you can do it without a powerlifting gym, but still, we appreciate
It's yeah.
and
I
love our
will say
powerlifting gyms.
too, just because powerlifting has gotten it's increased in popularity, especially post COVID. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like that it's become much more competitive, and maybe getting away where something where you could train on commercial type equipment maybe is going to become a bigger factor, especially for more advanced lifters who are trying to make it to worlds where I mean it's becoming extremely competitive, and something as much as like even half a kilo difference can make or break whether or not you place for first or second,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just these little things that are becoming of greater importance to quote unquote optimize your performance in the gym. I hate using that name. Same. I say maximize because it sounds better. It doesn't bother me as much.
I like that.
Yeah.
um, so next topic I want to go into buying equipment. So I'll start with this one. Overall, the idea of just like as a brand new powerlifter who hasn't done a first meet yet, like, do you need to buy all the stuff? And I feel like I might surprise you if I answer. I am not against people who are really early on buying the equipment early. Buying the knee sleeves and buying the belt. I think you don't have to have wrist wraps, but if you want them, I'm not against you getting them and like buying, a powerlifting shoe. I think a lot of people kind of go with the route of like just learn how to squat, bench, and deadlift first. And I'm 100% with that too. Like you need to understand form and technique. That's why I say you should get a coach. Like if you're relying on the belt to save your back because you don't understand how to brace, then okay, maybe don't use the belt yet. If you're relying on knee sleeves to like enzers to like save your squat because you're weak, you know what I mean? Like okay, that's a
Right.
different story. But overall, and especially if you do have a coach who's teaching how to use the equipment, that's even better. But I'm not against people buying the sleeves, the belt, the stuff like when they decide, hey, I want to do my first meet someday. Like getting used to that
Yeah.
equipment early can help you versus, oh, you have to be really good in this particular strong squatting this weight before you get to the knee sleeve. And I've had a lot of athletes come to me who are brand new who want to do a meet, but like they might be like, oh, I wanted my first meet in like 6 or 8 months, Lana. I'm like, that's great, that's cool. And they like I have a hard time getting them to want to buy equipment because they're like, oh, I'm not strong enough for it. I don't need it yet. I'm like, I hear you, but like the knee sleeve could really help us out a little. Like your squat form
Yeah.
technique has gotten really, really good. At this point, let's just build it. Don't you want the sleeves? Like, why not? Like, and people think they might over rely on them. I I hate that word. You said you hate the word optimize. I hate over rely. Stop pretending like wearing a belt is going to make it so if you take the belt off, you turn into a limp noodle if you squat and deadlift. Like you're not over relying. Yes, it helps you. It gives you something to brace against. It's gonna literally probably add kilos to your total right away, to be blunt, if you had no belt before. That's not over reliance. We're in a sport about lifting the maximum amount of weight. So stop pretending you're gonna over rely on it. Over reliance equals without this belt, my back will snap because I don't know what the hell I'm
Mm.
doing. That's relying. Okay, cool. That's all I have to say. Your turn.
So just to talk about the belt really quickly, and then I'll go back into my thoughts, is I think a lot of the misconception about a belt is that it's going to make your core weak if you over rely on it too much. And I think I actually made a post about this relatively recently about a study comparing beltless and belted training and if there is a difference in muscle activation, performance, and then if there's like like is it going to make your core weak if you rely on a belt? And the answer is no. When they did do EMG on the ab the core area, so I think it was the obliques and of course the abdominals and the erectors, and there was no significant differences. I think wearing a belt had greater slightly, and I don't know if this was significant abdominal activation, whereas maybe wearing a belt, and this could be backwards, I don't have this study on me, had greater oblique activation compared to without. And it, like I said, could be the other way around. But other than that, there was no difference. And so as far as wearing a belt every session and almost never training beltless is not going to have an impact on training or core strength. But again, it might be like a mental thing where say you forget your belt in a gym, or sorry, if you forget your belt at home while you're training and you have to squat without a belt, it can be kind of like a mental mind fuck just because you're so used to having this and then not having it is like, it just can be like, mentally difficult. So um, as far as like any physical difference, there's obviously aside from performance and being able to increase pressure, it's not going to make your core weak. Any sort of reliance is going to be mostly mental. So with that said, going back to the kind of equipment, uh, so the only equipment that you actually need that are required in order to compete in a meet is going to be a singlet. Um, I mean, general shoes, you could wear running shoes technically if you want to, and I've seen people compete in them. Not that I would typically recommend it. It's obviously not ideal for squatting or any sort of lifting, but it's allowed. It's a shoe. You just can't be barefoot. And then high knee socks for deadlifting, and that's more of like a hygiene issue. So if you scratch the bar and it bleeds, that you're not getting blood all over the bar. So those are technically the only requirements in order to compete. So you don't have to have a belt, you don't have to have knee sleeves, you don't have to have wrist straps, but those are obviously recommended, especially if you want to perform at your best. And if your goal is to, hit as much weight as you possibly can within the rules, then obviously having that equipment is going to be helpful. But again, at the end of the day, it's not a requirement, but I would definitely highly, highly recommend getting them as soon as possible, especially something like a belt, especially because there is a learning curve to it, just learning how to brace, and it does, require a little bit of practice. So I would not recommend getting a belt and then the first time using it is in a meet.
I'm happy you mentioned, I'm happy you mentioned the actual requirements for meet day. But yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned like what's actually required on meet day, like as in what you need to do for equipment check. And then also just mentioning that like there's a learning curve, because I didn't think about that. Like, yes, there is a learning curve. Like I even told a lifter of mine yesterday, because she was like, oh my gosh, I tried a 10 millimeter belt for the first time for my deadlift and it felt so good. I was like, girl, you're 5 weeks out though. So if you're going to buy one, that sounds cool. But if you buy it and it comes in 2 weeks, like I don't think you should use it for our meet. That's 3 weeks later. Like that's a little too short. And like, it's literally not just a learning curve, but like the last time I bought a new belt a long time ago, I had bruises. Like those belts, you need to break them, man. Now I don't know about other brands, but like I had to break my belt in. Like day 1 hurt, day 2 hurt, and then 2 weeks later I was good. But I was like, yo, I ruined my body.
That is also, I didn't even think of that as just trying to break in, because I've had belts that have left bruises on my ribs as I was getting used to them. And yeah, the last thing you want to do is be in pain the day of your meet just because your belt hasn't been broken in yet. So yeah.
So that was a
fair.
Good one. Right? Like I would say it's really just the belt for that, because I feel like knee sleeves you can adjust pretty fast. Well, you know what? That's a lie, because we now have like these super strict knee sleeves now. So forget what I said. Regular schmegular knee sleeves. But actually, if you have a stiff sleeve, oof.
Yeah. Well, even learning how to, I think there's a skill to putting knee sleeves on. So you can't just like take knee sleeves and I've had to like YouTube them. There are YouTube videos on how to get your knee sleeves on and off. And that's a skill in and of itself. So yeah, I would say I would definitely practice beforehand, at least before you do the meet, if you're going to compete in equipment, to make sure that you at least have it and are training in it beforehand.
Nice. Yes, I completely agree.
Do you want me to go downstairs?
Can you go somewhere else? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I think, all right, I want to talk about new powerlifters following accounts on Instagram, because I see the benefit, especially today with like the resources and stuff people put out. Certain accounts that are more educational can be very helpful. It might be, information overload, but still they can be helpful and give you tweaks. Like accounts like even yours, like I love your carousels. Steve and Newbie. I love your carousel. I read them every time. I'm like, yo, like I'm slacking because this is like really good.
So to be fair, Alfred, do you know Alfred? He's from Reformance Training. So him and I have
I know of him.
been collab. Okay. So he owns Reformance, and I am not, my area of expertise is not marketing, is not graphic design, anything like that. So him and I came up with this agreement that, so if you see my post now, he does all of the designs and I just get all of the content, and then he makes it pretty.
I love that.
Yeah. And so it's been really helpful for me, just because I don't enjoy making content like that. It's too time consuming. I'm not great at it. It takes me 2 days to complete. So yeah, we do it together. So with that said, I would say that I like mine, of course. My content is definitely more, I guess, scientific and uh highly reliant on like studies that have come out. And that might be a little too much for some people. I try to make it for everyone to understand, but if I understand the content, my mother may not so much. So I would say, yeah, myself for more like, I don't use evidence based, but more
Well,
research,
it is
science based.
evidence
Yeah.
based. Like I
Um,
love like when you quote studies, kind of like, yo, that's not my content. I did not quote studies. I'll be out here like, do
yeah.
your accessories, people. Like you want the deep
Yeah.
stuff, like be my client. Like that's how I am.
And Steve and the whole Powerlifting Now, I think they do a good job of kind of like an in between where they have an evidence based mindset, but they're not using like, we're based off of this study, you should be doing this. They kind of use a combination of, well, this is kind of what I think with Steve Denovi's his fatigue single, and I actually sent a message about this because I think it's a really great idea and it makes sense, right? But of course, like there hasn't been any research done on it yet. So
Hmm.
he's just going off of, well, this is kind of what makes sense to me. It's worked very well for my athletes, but again, there's no evidence to really back it up. And then what happens is science kind of comes in and says, oh, well, let's do this and see if it actually works on paper. And I mean, assuming that it does, but he is I really like that he's forward thinking in that way, where he kind of goes beyond evidence based and he's kind of, I would say, pushing the boundaries a little bit, if that makes sense. So he's in Powerlifting Now in general is, I think, would be a great account, or even just the platform itself, because they provide content, but they also offer paid, like a subscription based content, which is kind of an in between of case studies and working with their own athletes and kind of what's the current science says.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that a lot. Especially also another good account to like the Swole Fester, which is Marcellus from Popping Now. But his YouTube,
Mhm.
like I like how he just breaks stuff down and explains like he might explain like, oh, how these back accessories really helped with something. Just like he really puts it in a way it's really easy to understand. So
Mhm.
I like that kind of content. So I think
Yeah.
like it can be really beneficial to follow certain accounts that are more educational based. And then I know one thing though, when it comes to being your powerlifter, how to get into it. You found someone who looked really cool, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at like Amanda Lawrence. Like how much weight is she lifting? And that's really awesome. And like I love that she posts her lifts. If you're mostly following like Russ Stroll and Amanda and like other people who are just really, really big and just kind of post like their lifts, you might start to want to copy their form because you're not
Mhm.
trying to educate yourself. You're just like looking at your favorite lifters. That's where I want to be more weary with the newer powerlifter. Make sure that if you find someone who you're a fan of, that's amazing. Don't try to literally copy what they look like. Like, try if you're gonna try to learn from Instagram at all, go for the person who's trying to actually educate, and like they have athletes who you can see are doing well and they're successful, so that you're like, oh, this
Mhm.
actually can make some sense.
I actually would find, and I like that you said like following these popular accounts, and not that it's bad or anything, but they're obviously elite lifters, and you don't want to mimic their programming because their programming is highly specific, or as it should be, to them. Um, and then even that goes as far as some of the most popular coaches are not necessarily the best coaches. They just have the most popular lifters per
Mm-hmm.
se. And then sometimes you see that, well, this is so and so's coach, so I want to work with that coach because they coach this person. And I would actually say that, yes, it's probably, you know, a great way to market, but a great coach is going to be someone who kind of takes someone like a novice lifter and makes them a great power lifter, or at least not makes them, but assists them. And so seeing like Meg Scanlon, and not that she was by any means when she started a novice lifter, but she started working with Kelly from Perform Motion,
Mm.
I believe is their company. And Meg Scanlon was already a great lifter, right? No one's going to argue that. Did she win nationals before? I don't, she was definitely a top lifter, whether
See,
or
I
not
don't
she had
quite remember.
shoes.
I remember her getting second after she had her twins, and like somehow I'm like forgetting everything that happened post pre twins.
Yeah,
Oh no, well she went to Worlds before that though. So
she
she
did
won
go to
nationals.
Worlds, yes. So the first time I ever met her was when we competed as a 63 together. So it was me, Jen Thompson, Sam Calhoun, and then Meg Scanlon. Those were like kind of the four of us at the time. And then she dropped down to 57. And then she won 57, competed at Worlds, and I think believe placed second at Worlds behind Maria T, who was a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian lifter. And so she was by no means a beginner lifter. She was arguably a great elite lifter. She started working with Kelly from Perform Motion, and she made this great lifter a phenomenal lifter,
I
right?
know.
To the point where she's squatting, I don't know, I want to say 10 or 15 kilos more than her max. I mean, obviously she went up a weight class, but she's putting on, we say that elite lifters, if you put 2.5 kilos on any of your lifts, that's a huge deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she's putting 5, 10, 15 kilos on some of her lifts. So I think that's an indication of a great lifter. And even you, because I mean, you've been working with your coach for several years now, but you worked with your previous coach for a while and you did pretty well, you said, leading up to that point. And then
Yeah.
you started working with your current coach, and he just made you like from a good lifter to a great lifter. So I think that's a better indication of a good coach than just all these popular, I hate saying clout lifters, but that's clout lifters who are just
I,
strong and they just post their really good gym lifts.
Thank you, Brad, for all you've done for me. But yes, 100% correct. Like
Shout out to
so,
Brad.
shout out to
Is it
Brad
integrative
Gilliard.
strength?
Yes, it
Integrative
is
strength?
integrated
Okay.
strength. But yeah, no, those are really good points. Like overall, the gist is if you're looking at people for people to look up to, just be wary and make sure that you're looking at people who are posting educational stuff. If you're seeing your favorite lifter, that's cool. Copying them may not be the best idea. If you're looking for a coach, I have a whole episode, and maybe two actually, about looking for a coach. I'm gonna link in the show notes.
Didn't
Um,
we do an episode on finding a coach?
we talked about, I don't know if that was the entire episode, but we definitely talked about like what to look for when looking for a coach
In
for
a
sure.
coach. Yeah, and that was a
Hmm.
recent podcast.
It was. So yeah, I'll tag it below or post it in the show notes because like I definitely think you should look at their athletes and see how they're doing. And if you can, like if you are someone like me, now I've been in sport for a long time, so I can like DM people don't know who I am. Like before Brad, I didn't really have to ask around because he had handled me before at meets, but I did ask a couple people like, hey, like how do you like him as a coach? Like, and it's not just like, hey, I've seen him get stronger, but I'm like, is he responsive? Is he on time? Does he communicate well? Like ask those questions. You can look at the biggest coach in the world and he's got a million athletes, that could mean he may
That's
not spend a lot of time talking to you. That could mean that. Or
yeah.
it could be someone like Marcellus who has 80 clients and somehow manages to be on top of every single one.
Does he have 80
He has
clients?
80 clients, and I'm not kidding.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
I'm friends with so many of his clients, and I don't mean like the top one. I'm friends with clients that pay people don't know their name, and they're like, "Yep, no, always on time, always talking to me, always getting back to me on time." I'm like, "Oh my god, God bless you." But he's just a special
Yeah.
kind of person, and I will never be that
Yeah.
kind of person. I couldn't
Oh
do
my
it.
gosh. I cap myself at 40
Yo, my
if I
cap is
haven't.
like well, I kind of made it 30 again, but it was 35, and I was like, I kind of like 30. Like literally, that's me. I'm
Yeah.
like 30
But
is
at least you're
chilling.
honest, and then if you know that having any more in that of than that you probably wouldn't be able to give the quality coaching that your athletes deserve. And I think that's important than the other coach who's just going to take on as many clients as they possibly can, um, because they want, more clients is more intake. Uh, and that kind of, at that point, the quality of coaching might go down at the expense of having more clients. And so, yeah. But if, yeah, Marcelo's having 80 and if he's great and he can handle it, and it's probably his focus, right? Like I
It's
have
insane. Like he's
school,
just a different
I,
breed.
yeah, that's crazy. And I know maybe once I am graduated from school and I can focus 100%, maybe I could take on more. But I know myself, and I've said if I were to have 80 clients in this moment, I know that they would not have quality coaching, so.
You're like 45 of them ain't getting the response.
Then 45, I'm going to be late on 45 people and they're going to not like me. So, yeah.
Love it.
So, yeah.
That's all I had. Anything else cross your mind about what you would tell your 2014 self?
What would I tell my 2014 self? So the only other thing that I would add, if we're just going off of that, is kind of the mindset of going into a competition in your first meet. And I know that other people feel this way because I felt this way, is feeling like I have to hit a certain number in order to compete. And the athletes that I have now, they're like, well, I'm not strong. I want to get strong first and then do a meet. And I will tell you right now that you will never going to feel strong. You are never going to feel prepared 100%. The only way that you are going to is if you do a meet. And I always say, just get the first meet out of the way, and if that means you have no equipment and you're squatting in running shoes, by all means, like just do the meet, have fun, get that experience, and then decide if you like it. And if you absolutely hate it, then buying all that equipment probably isn't going to be worth it. But if you like it, and at least now and now to put in the time and the effort to pursue powerlifting. So
I like that.
that's all I
Okay,
got.
I'll do one. One thing I'll tell my
Yeah.
2016 self. Okay, so I'm not going to mention any coach's name. And honestly, if someone thinks they know it, they probably don't. This is like a coach I had really early on who stopped coaching a long time ago. If you are investing in online coaching, that coach they should do everything they committed to doing. And remember, just the big thing I would say, remember that you are investing in them, aka you're paying them. So if they promise you a service and they're not hitting the commitments that they literally promised you don't even have to apologize when you leave. You can just leave. Don't stay because you feel bad. Don't stay because you feel weird. You're too nervous. You can leave. Just know you can leave. Remember, you are essentially employing them in a way, right? With giving them money. So, and then also, if
Yeah.
they are talking to you in a way that makes you feel dumb, that makes you feel dumb, if you mention it and they don't take it well, they may be, or they probably are, emotionally immature. You can leave them. Like you can go. Nothing's going to
Yeah.
happen if you go. And I really wish my younger self knew that because I would have had less emotional turmoil in my young brain. Like I don't know what to do. I have to walk.
And
You know what I
the
mean? It's the
stress
end of the
of
world. I'm 20 years old and
Yeah, and the stress of leaving a coach. And if a coach has a bad reaction of you leaving, like I've had clients that have left and wanted to go to other people, and it happens, right? They, you know, for whatever reason. Um and I'm always like, you know what? Like, okay, I think that coaches have different personalities too, and I'm not a very like militant coach. I'm not gonna yell at you if you were sick a day and then you have to move some things. I'm like, listen, life comes first. Where I know that some coaches are not like that, and they're like, do this at exactly as I say, and if you go off program, you are in big trouble.
you in
And that's
big
just not,
trouble.
yeah, that's like not my personality. And if that's the type of coaching style that you want, then we probably won't be a good fit. So,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for the first episode of 2024. OMG.
So 2025 next week.
Pretty much. Like, you blink and it's New Year's again. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my
But
God.
always fun talking with you. We'll figure out what we're talking about next week. Maybe, hey, if y'all ever want to hear something specific, you can DM me or Chris D on Instagram and let
Yeah.
us know what you're thinking, because we love getting ideas. We appreciate that. Appreciate the listeners, and y'all catch you next time on the Power and Lifting Podcast.